Greetings, everybody. Good evening, good morning, depending on wherever you are. We're excited about our first webinar, and there's more coming up your way. I request to keep your microphones muted, and please keep your video feeds off as well. Today's topic, as you know, we'll cover up how to start developing apps with Configure.IT. We'll go through creating a sample application to see different components of the platform, and followed by a brief question and answer. I've got a whole team here with me. I'm Jigar Panchal, working with marketing. We have Mr. Nilay Mehta, who is the lead technical architect for the product. We have Mr. Jigar Joshi, who is the product manager. So basically, as you would anticipate developing with any mobile application, there are a few core parts that you would need to address. First and foremost is handling the application user interface. The second is defining the data structure for your application. Then there would be a development of the business logic or the APIs that would connect the application with the database. And you would have the interface whereby you can manage your actual data as a part of data management console, or the CMS as you would normally refer to it. If you have been using Configure.IT, you already might have an idea about few stuff that we are going to go through, but what we are going to show you will definitely help you understand the deep insights and the actual workflow of developing a mobile app through Configure.IT. I request, if you have any questions, I request you to put up in the chat window, and we'll answer that at the end of our demonstration. I request you to keep your microphones open, microphones closed rather, and then keep your speakers open. You can try calling in through either computer or by phone line with the toll-free number. Please confirm in the chat if you are able to listen to me properly. If you are not, then I don't know. You'll just see what we are going through. So let's start first with creating a new project. Once you logged in, you can create a new project. On project creation screen, you'll see some templates which as a part of the templates gallery, which are pre-built apps, which is fully functional app that we have built with Configure.IT and is available for you to use as a template, which you can use as a base to start off to basically understand how the configuration and the internal parts of Configure.IT works. We'll create a project with one of the templates, a movie template, which is called MGO. It's basically a template which lists down all the popular movies based on genres and has the details of it. We'll use a template to create a project. Now, what this process does is since these templates are pre-built apps already with Configure.IT, they are being copied from the master configuration set into your project space for you to be able to further customize and modify and play around with it. It comes up with the actual application user interface, the complete API set as a part of business logic, a complete backend with database structure, and including the sample data as well. It's the easiest way to get started and learn about what's possible with Configure.IT, and that's why we are using it as a base rather than starting from scratch. Now once this template is being copied into your project space, you'll see some more options as a part of setting up your application project. Things like splash screen and app icon, along with some other configuration parameters. We'll proceed towards the next step. Once this is done, you will actually land up in the application configuration console. This is the actual visual editor completely in your browser, capable of doing everything that you would normally do in your Xcode workspace. It's a full-fledged visual editor where you can have different options. We'll go about understanding those areas of visual editor so that you can get an idea from where to start. It's extremely easy to get used to, just like any other visual editor if you have worked with any Xcode or familiar IDEs. On the left hand, you see the different screens, which is an outcome of the template that we copied. Since that template already had pre-configured screens, we see the list there. You can search and go through different screens as a part of navigation. You also have a list of controls right there at the left, just besides the tab for screens. All these controls are native controls, exclusively integrated as a part of supporting iOS native controls, as well as we have some customized controls which are specially developed by Configure.IT. Things like these controls you would normally not find in the native iOS SDK. Controls like custom picker or a grid view or a rating view, for which you normally have to do a lot of coding, and that's what the aim is, to be able to integrate those pieces right into your app without having to further worry about coding. On the right hand side, you have the data source. There are different options basically on the right hand side which refers to the application. We'll begin by the data source. Now, data source is the actual channel through which your application either receives or transmits the data. It's basically a connection of either the server-side data or the local data if your application supports offline. There is miscellaneous setting, which refers to the generic settings specific to the applications, things like default page or splash screen, or map option for that matter, if you want to use whether Apple Map or default Google Map. You also have the tab settings to enable the tabbed interface into your application. Things you would normally see as a tab interface like Contacts app or App Store app, you can enable that here. We also have a template with this feature. As you would expect, having tabs into your app requires a special kind of navigation flow. We have a template for that as well, like Trailers app as a part of the template gallery, which you can use to create an app. Let's go about creating a new screen and see how the flow looks like when you actually want to add a new screen. You have plenty of options as a part of creating new screen. Either you choose from ready-to-use templates. There are different style of templates based on the information that you want to portray on that particular screen. You can either choose that template, which includes the complete user interface, or you can start off as a blank and right from scratch you can compose your own screen based on your interface requirements. One of the unique features that we support here is to upload the direct PSD files. We have developed a small Photoshop plugin. What it does is it creates the sprites automatically from your Photoshop file where you have created the user interface. Once you run that script inside the Photoshop, it slices up your PSD files into sprites and creates a configuration file and clubs them all together as a zip, which you can upload back here, and it will completely create your screen as you have designed in your Photoshop. It completely eliminates the need of decomposing your Photoshop document into sprites and then recomposing them back again, just like you would normally do in Xcode, which is not the case here. You can upload that configuration parameter here, and then you can have your screen ready in a matter of a few minutes. So this is the way to create a new screen. Let's see how the things look like inside when you have already configured the screen. So if you see here, once we select any control, now the screen is, as we copied the template, has already all the configuration done. Once you select a control, you will see a panel popping up showing the different properties of the specific control that you have selected. Now all these properties belong to the type of control that you have selected. We have selected a label control. So the panel shows the properties related to the UI labels. On top of the default, as you would expect, you'll see the default properties of a specific control, but on top of that, just like controls, we have custom properties as well for a specific control, for which you would normally require to code in if you were to develop this in your native SDK. But here, there are certain specific customized properties that we have developed with just a matter of configuration, things like rotation of a label. So this is okay. I missed one part. There's another part of a specific control, which is the action panel, which is just in the same panel as properties. Now these actions are events on which you want to trigger certain actions. There are different gestures and events that we have pre-configured here, which you can just select and trigger a specific action. We'll refer to this later down the road when we go through the next steps as a part of integration of data. This is the complete visual editor that we talked about, which also has many other features, things like alignment and formatting and copy paste and contextual menus, which makes your life easy as you would expect with any visual editor. This is the app console which we just saw, which is responsible for composing the user interface for our application. As I talked about, this is the first step with Configure.IT to be able to compose the user interface for your mobile app. Now we'll move towards the next step of defining the data structure. Now, to configure the data structure, we'll go to the backend link right at the top, which is available in the visual editor, which will lead you to the backend portion of this project. So again, to reiterate, whenever you create a project, a Configure.IT project is a combination of your application user interface and the complete backend. We are jumping from application interface to the backend part. Once you go to the back end, you see the dashboard where you have easy access of all the different sections for the back end. Just for the simplicity, we'll cover up two parts today: to configure the data structure and to be able to build the business logic, which we call it as an API. So let's go ahead and see how the database structure is to be dealt with. So when you go to database configuration, you see the different tables. Now again, since we copied the template, it has few tables already set up. Out of these tables that you see, there are some system tables as well, which has been created by Configure.IT itself. We suggest you do not play around with this unless you know what exactly you are doing, but then you can create your own custom tables as well. These tables actually are exact representation of your MySQL database table. So let's see one of the tables, Movie Master. Let's go inside that and see how the actual real table looks like. It's a combination of all the fields. You can define your primary keys, you can create new fields, you can define data types, you can have your field lengths, you can add new fields as well. We have default template fields as well, which will also have a propagating effect inside the entire platform, like validations and all, already right tightly integrated when you add a template field. You can also add indexing for better searching and query optimization on a specific field. Whenever you add an index on a field, you will see that in one of the sections right besides the table. There is also an option for creating an SQLite database if your application needs to support the offline functionality as well. So we'll need the offline data inside your app to be able to configure the local database which will reside in your application in case you don't want to have internet connection. You can define the SQL-like database here. Now, one of the unique features that we provide here is you can replicate the entire MySQL database, which would normally reside on your servers, remote servers. And to be able to have better synchronization logic, you can replicate the entire MySQL database into SQL-like, and you can put that into your app and define the logic based on your business rules. You can select specific table or you can select them all. So this is more like defining database structure. Again, I want to emphasize that this is a real MySQL-driven database for your project. As you create a table, you modify a table, you create a field, is actually creating a real MySQL operation behind scenes. So it's not just pre-cooked stuff or any other unknown database system. It's a full RDBMS as you would expect with MySQL, and it supports all the features of MySQL, things like trigger and stored procedures. You can write them all as well. But just for the sake of simplicity, we'll just move ahead with the basic flow of creating an application without going much into the detail. Now we covered up the second part of defining the data structure. We'll come down to the third part to be able to design the business logic, which we call it as an API. Now basically, if you think of a business logic, if you translate a business logic into the actual script, it is a collection of the database queries. You'll either need to have an insert query or a select query or an update query based on certain conditions and loops, and maybe trigger some special notifications like SMS or email based on a certain condition. To be able to deal with all this, we have a unique way to handle and develop your business logic. As you already know, instead of coding, we have a visual editor. Something which you already are familiar with is to deal with flowcharts. It's as easy as laying down your conditions with different nodes and putting them together in a piece to be able to have the API. So we already have a list of APIs as a part of template. If you go into the detail, you see that one of the APIs that we have is to have the movie detail, which is just as simple as you see on your screen. It's just a select query, and it passes on the output to the endpoint from wherever this API was called, which will be the application in our case. Just to quickly demonstrate how easy it is to be able to develop APIs, let's go about creating a small API. We'll create an API to get the specific movies information. We'll create an API named movie detail, and we'll pass on as an input parameter the movie ID for which we want the detail for. So we'll set up as an input parameter. We'll mark it as a required field out of the pre-cooked validations that we have here. There are a lot of validations based on the data type you would require to enter as an input parameter. We'll hit next. This is your API has been created, but you still need to put the business logic into it. You'll see different nodes there. You either can fire a database query, you can have a condition. In our case, we'll need a select query. So we'll need to refer to the movie database, movie table rather. We'll select movie master, hit next. Now, since we selected movie master as our target table, it brought down all the fields that we had set up in the movie master. We'll just select here what kind of fields we want as an output, or rather as a part of the select query. We hit next. We put a where condition to match the input parameter that we received as a part of movie ID. We'll compare that with the movie ID of the database table. Hit next. And since we don't have any other operations in our query like group by or having condition, we'll just hit save and be done. To complete the API, we'll need to have a finish step just like you would have in your flowchart. Now, when you have the finish step, you need to mention what output parameters you want to pass. In our case, once we have the finish step, it will show all the select fields that we fired into our select query, and they will be ready here to be served as an output. You can select either all of them, or you can have a selected fields only. On top of it, you can also pass on your special message based on the success parameters and a custom message just to be able to show appropriate message when your application fires this API. We'll call it, we'll put a nice message here just so that we can know. Voila, that's your API. That's your API done in 2 minutes without writing any single line of code. Now let's see how it performs. We'll need to execute it and pass on a specific ID for the movie. Oops, we didn't fire any parameter. And this is in, remember we had put in the validation for the required parameter for movie ID, which we didn't pass, so it threw us back an error. Now we'll put a movie ID in place and see how it gives us an output. You see, it gives us the valid JSON output, including all the movie information that we stored into the database. All right, so that's how you deal with APIs. This was a very simple API. There can be a lot many things that you can do with APIs, and you can as I told, you can have your complex conditions, loops. You can even put your own PHP custom functions. You can call any third-party APIs, and you can put different notifications as well. So this was your business logic. Now let's move towards integrating the business logic back to the screens that we designed. So we come down to the movie details. Remember, we referred to the data source. Now again, to reiterate what I meant data source at that time, this data source is actually the channel where you define from where this application will fetch or put the data. It could be a local database, or it could be the server-side database. This template already had a data source defined for this movie details screen, for which it refers to the API that we created. So whenever you have a data source created, you will see the list of APIs as a target for that data source. Now this list of APIs is the same list of API that you created in the backend. So it's tightly integrated with one another. You can select any of the API, and based on the API, you will also need to pass on the input parameters that specific API requires. You can either pass on the parameter from the session variables, or a previous page, or any of the form object, or you can even pass on any device information, things like your location or anything. You can select the value out of the parameter source that you select. And you also need to mention, once this data source is triggered, the output of the data source, where you will store. So you will basically need to identify the containers within this screen once this API is called, where you would like to display or deal with that data. So this is the same list of output parameters that we had in our API. So once you select an output parameter, you can select directly the source of it. Either you can select a form object, or you can store the output in a session variable, for which you can, which can be further used in the subsequent screens as a part of your navigation. Right? If you select any of the form object, you can see the entire list of available objects or controls you have put in the screen, and directly map that output parameters value into some specific control. So this is as easy as like mapping your output parameter to something that you see on the screen. So it's effortless, completely effortless. Now that we have defined the data source, the application still needs to know when exactly this data source will be triggered. So it needs to have a certain triggering point like action, something which we referred earlier, when you select a specific object in the screen. Now, your entire screen could be an object as well. So in your object tree, you can either select any specific object or the main object which represents your master screen. In our case, whenever the screen loads, we want to immediately load the movie information. So we'll select main view as an triggering point and select an action for that main view. We'll select view will appear action just to signify that whenever the screen loads, we want to trigger certain data event. So we'll click on view will trigger. It notes that there is an action for that. Whenever we have an action selected, we'll need to tell which data source we want to load the data from. So the action first needs to be defined as a web service call. Out of many other actions apart from web service call, you can either redirect to a specific page, you can trigger any device feature like initiate a call feature or an SMS or an email or a URL. There are plenty of options here. We'll select web service call since we want to call an API from the data source. We'll select web service. Once you select web service, you'll see the data sources defined for that particular screen in the data source panel. We defined movie detail as a data source, which is available here, which you select here, will trigger the API that we defined and gives you the output of a movie detail. You can, now this is very simple flow, but you can also define different actions based on different conditions and cases. You can define multiple actions as well. You can define multiple conditions as well. And then you have different combinations of conditions and actions based on the logic that you need. So we covered up 3 crucial steps: defining the application UI, defining the data structure, and now we also recently covered up integrating the business logic within the screen. For the sake of simplicity, we will not cover the data management console part, but now that we have the basic stuff to be able to preview what the application looks like, we'll now to see using our preview app to see how it all looks like. Preview app is our exclusive preview app available for free on App Store, which helps you sign in and browse through your project in native experience right in the device, whether it's an iPhone or iPad. So you log into your preview app, and once you log in, you'll see the walkthrough of using it, the preview app. You can see different projects here that you have in your account. We'll select the webinar demo because that's the project we are working with. You can browse through different projects by swiping up. You can also directly preview any of the template in the preview app, just to see how these templates actually work on the real world application scenario. There are plenty of other templates. We'll create, we'll see the preview of our own project. We'll tap on a preview app. What it does is compiles the code in the cloud in real time. It's the same process that you do in your Xcode while building any app, but the difference here is it creates instant compilation in the cloud and gives you the real-time output. So you don't have to worry about generating build every time that you want to look at a preview. in your Xcode simulator. This is our patent pending technology, which helps you to preview the changes instantly. In other words, you don't, let's say if you are working on a specific screen, has 2 previous steps to be able to get down to that screen. And if you make the change to that screen, let's say you change the font color, you don't have to go back, compile the build again, and navigate back to that screen to be able to see whether the change was effective or not. Compared to that exercise, in Preview tab, whenever you are looking at a particular screen, you just swipe across with your 2 fingers and that screen instantly generates the output right where you are seeing it without even having to compile the build again or either navigating back and coming back again to see how it looks like. This is our patent pending technology where we compile the builds in real time in the cloud. It's a and remember, this is a full native output. It's not HTML5 or any gimmick. It's a full native view as you would see in your any app build with native SDK along with the live data. Let's see a quick example of how the real-time preview works. Let's change the title of the screen from movies to, let's say, movie details. You will go back to your configuration screen. Let's make it movie detail instead of movies detail. So you edit the label. Oops. Yep. Movie details. That's it. And you want to maybe change the color to something like yellow. Doesn't look good, but this is just try and see how it looks like in instant preview. So if you change the title and change the color, you are on this screen. You are not navigating back or you're not generating the build again. You are just refresh. You hit the refresh screen and it compiles everything in the cloud and gives you the instant output. There you see the title changed to movie details with yellow color. And this is not just restricted to the formatting changes. You can actually remap the entire data sources again and then you can instantly preview. There is a floating access of quick menu there with Configure.IT logo, which gives you plenty of options to take notes on a specific screen. You can even record your entire browsing cycle and upload it to the Configure.IT cloud. The beauty of this feature is it helps a ton whenever you want to debug anything and you want to record it and refer to that into your development workspace in your app console, which is available in the notes section in the visual editor. On the right hand side, you have an icon for notes, which shows you the notes you have taken or any preview user has taken on either specific screen or a project. So this is how the complete you see there is a complete cycle of defining for the application user interface, data structure, business logic, integration of business logic with the application user interface, and previewing them all instantly. We have skipped a lot many features because of the time limit, but there's a ton of more stuff that you can use and make your application feature rich as well as smarter. There are plenty of options as a part of application configuration as well as the backend. It not only saves us a lot of time for developing the apps this way without doing coding, but also gives you as a developer instantly reusable modules which you can reuse in your next project. You can reuse things like database tables, your APIs as business logic, and your application user interface components. You can virtually use the entire screens in your next projects. You don't have to work them over and over again on the same thing. And the best part is when you are done with your app development, you can either download the IPA file for which you don't need a Mac because it's completely browser based and all the compilation happens in the Configure.IT cloud. So you can virtually develop iPhone apps either on the Windows machine or Linux. You can download the extendable source code as well, which you can further customize, something which For example, you add augmented reality into your app. You can develop the whole app in Configure.IT, download the extendable source code, and add the augmented reality feature into your app without much of an effort. This not only gives you immense time-saving technique to develop apps, but also gives you full freedom to develop whatever you want, even on top of what you can do with Configure.IT. So with this, we are concluding our demonstration, and I welcome any questions that you have. You can put in the questions to the Configure.IT host in your chat window, and we'll take them one by one and answer them. Okay, so we have a question here. Do you guys have any templates or e-commerce or education for schools? Well, our template library is continuously growing. We do have one of the templates called product catalog, which has the product browsing features, but we don't have an e-commerce functionality, which we can add later on. Okay, so we have a second question. Can we create the tab bar application and side panel from Configure.IT? Well, yes, you can have the tab bar application. As I told in the beginning, we have the trailers app template as a part of our template gallery, which has the tab bar interface. And we also have a side panel interface as a part of our a la carte template, which is more like browsing the restaurant menu items. Okay, we have one more question related to the database. Can we import our own database into Configure.IT? Yes, you can import the SQL file, which you can export from PHPMyAdmin or any MySQL browser. You can go to the backend and choose an import table option, which gives you an option to either connect to the remote server or upload the SQL file and set up the database. You'll have to provide, of course, the database access information like your database host and server and username and password. Okay, interesting. I find this webinar very useful. And will this be an ongoing process? Is it possible to download them? Well, thanks a lot. We were glad that we are being helpful. And we also know that it's on a very short notice and very focused towards specific topic. We'll have plenty more coming up in the few weeks, and we'll cover up more advanced topics as well. As far as downloading the webinar, we'll upload them onto our YouTube channel. You can follow us on the YouTube channel, and from where you can get the updates and view the webinars later on whenever you wish. Okay, can you create an app for your website using this platform? If yes, how do you go about doing that? Well, it's a complicated question as such, but I'll answer that in a very brief. It depends on the kind of website. If your database is driven by the database, you can import the database or create an API which connects to your database and refer to those APIs into your app. As long as creating an interface is concerned, you can create whatever interface you want to create through the app console. Okay, we have one more question. Thanks. Keep them coming in. Can we integrate third-party APIs like Facebook or Twitter? Yes, we have a third-party API connector in the APIs, as well as we support tight integrations with Facebook and Twitter as a part of the application configuration as well, where you define the data source. You can, or rather, you can define the actions on a specific event where you can directly call any Facebook or Twitter API. Okay, we have a new question based on the push notification. Is it possible to generate selective notifications so that push messages are sent out to a specific device? Yes, you can send out push notifications to the specific users based on certain conditions. In your API configuration, you have an option to generate a push notification trigger where you can select different channels, either select set of device IDs or certain conditions depending on. We have a video for that, how to configure and integrate push messages into your application. We have the tutorial on our YouTube channel, which you can refer. If you have any more questions regarding that, feel free to contact us on support, and we'll be glad to answer. Okay, we have a question regarding the source code. Backend downloaded code will be in which framework? It is based in the CodeIgniter framework, which is based on PHP. It's a proven MVC standard, by the way, as far as different PHP frameworks are concerned, and it's easy to modify. Any more questions, guys? We have last 5 minutes left, and I'll be more than happy to answer any more questions. If you have any lengthy questions, you can also post on our support portal, and we'll be glad to answer them. Okay, we have one more question. When I generate a new project, will this project also be downloadable for Android in the future, or do I have to generate a new project for Android altogether? Well, yes, Android is on the verge of getting launched. We're just in the final stages. So whenever you have a project already configured for iOS and you are also using the Android version, you only have to modify the user interface part just to match up the Android device form factors and resolutions. And again, that would be smart enough so that you don't have to do much of the things, but still you have to make sure that the interface on the Android device is justifying the user experience. However, the logic-based configuration, your data sources and actions, you don't have to reconfigure them all. They'll be all ready as long as you use the same screens in the Android as the iOS project. And we'll have more workflow-based updates coming up when we have the Android version out. Can we make application compatible with iPhone 6 and 6 Plus? Yes, you can. All the current templates that you see are compatible with iPhone 6 and 6 Plus. Okay, so while I wait for another question, just wanted to make sure, and I'm sure you must be aware of this, we also have a detailed help center which lays out different reference manuals, documentation, and a lot of reference videos. You can refer to hc.configure.it, or you can just go to the website and follow the link right at the top. Okay, we have still 2 minutes left. If you are to have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer. And then we will conclude if I don't hear anything. well, we received feedback as well instead of questions. This is the future. Thanks for the webinar. Well, we truly appreciate, and we are happy that the webinar is helpful. We'll try to conduct as many webinars to assist you to get the maximum out of the platform and make more feature-rich and smarter as ever than before. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, this is the last question that we have. I'm very new to app development, and the backend is somewhat confusing. What I can do to understand it better? Well, you can go through the help center. As I said, we have a very detailed instruction sets on the help center in form of the reference manuals as well. And we have a lot of videos which we are continuously increasing, which are uploaded on our YouTube channel. You can just head to youtube.com/configure.it, and you can go through a lot of videos which will show you the actual walkthrough of configuration process of different sections of entire backend as well as for the application console. Well, thanks very much, guys. I still welcome any questions that you have, but due to the time constraint, I'll have to sign off. Thank you so much for attending this webinar. I hope you got a lot of inputs and insights. Still, if you have any questions, feel free to contact us via support ticket portal. Go to support.configure.it or go to our website and follow the support link and post us any feedback or any questions that you have. You can also take advantage of our live help where our support agents, whenever they are available, will assist you in troubleshooting. We'd love to listen to your feedback or any comments, and we hope that you continue to use the platform. Thanks very much.